This is BeerSmith episode number 110, and it's late August 2015. John Blichmann, the head of Blichmann Engineering, joins me for a special show recorded at the National Homebrew Conference in San Diego. Thank you to this week's sponsor, Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine. They're now offering a full 6 issues a year, up from 4, at a great discount. They're offering a new discount code now, which gives you 15% off everything they sell, including subscriptions and training. The new code is BeerSmith 2015. I encourage you to check out this great new magazine for homebrewers at beerandbrewing.com and use the offer code BeerSmith 2015 to get your 15% discount today. And also, BeerSmith. Design great beer, brew with confidence, and brew your best beer ever with BeerSmith brewing software. BeerSmith lets you create your own recipes from scratch or access tens of thousands of recipes found on the BeerSmith cloud. Also, our desktop and mobile versions work together seamlessly to make brewing easier. Give BeerSmith a try today by downloading the free 21-day trial from BeerSmith.com. Get your free trial today at BeerSmith.com. I apologize for the background noise this week. We recorded this episode on a noisy show floor at the National Homebrew Conference in San Diego. And now let's jump into this week's episode. So today, joining me on the show floor from the BeerSmith booth at the National Homebrew Conference in San Diego is Mr. John Blichmann, the head of Blichmann Engineering.
Hey, Brad.
Company that makes some of the nicest brewing equipment in the world. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing very well. At the NHC, it's always a good time.
Yeah, I'm having a good time. John was on before for podcast 92 discussing advanced brewing systems. You've been on several times before. It's great to have you back on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Brad. Always a joy to help.
So we were just talking a minute ago about some of this beer. It's pretty good.
It is delicious.
The 1911 from Coronado Brewing, which happens to be right next to us in the booth. Very, very nice beer. We're enjoying that. So we're halfway through this year's conference. How are you enjoying it?
I'm enjoying it well, but my voice is fighting back.
Is it really? Is it shot yet?
I'm about 50%.
50%.
Yep. I think I'll go batteries out right at 3 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah.
Then I won't be able to talk for a week.
Well, I was talking with you on the phone last week, and you mentioned you wanted to discuss how you've seen an uptick in purchasing for people that are looking at building nano-breweries, or really looking at starting their own brewery kind of on a shoestring, really.
Right. Folks that are wanting to go pro. There's a couple of different ways to look at it. Some take the approach of go big or go home. But what we want to make sure is that those brewers that could really become awesome brewers don't go home. So there's different groups of people have different risk tolerance, different financial backgrounds. Some people are more well off and can get loans from the bank and help fund this. And others are just regular Joe homebrewers that are trying to take their regular day job and try to do something that they really enjoy. So it's kind of a balance on getting started. So
well, I mean, there's some advantages to starting out with your own money too, right?
Oh, there sure is.
Ownership and
a lot less risk.
Not having to deal with investors who may be complaining about what you're doing, right?
Yes, and then you get investors involved and they want something quickly, as a return on their money, and when you're starting, a business, as you well know, cash flow is king. It takes cash to grow. So,
yep.
It's always that balance. So
let's start with the definition. What is a nano-brewery? I mean, everybody kind of knows what a craft brewer is, and certainly know what some of the big, Anheuser-Busch and some of the really, really giant brewers are. How do we define a nano-brewery?
That's kind of a somewhat nebulous area. I generally consider anything below 3 barrels. Mm-hmm. You get much above that, you're really going to start getting into the higher-end commercial type gear. That is, it's got a lot more sophistication, much higher price tag.
Yeah.
Which is, one of the things. So it's a little bit different of a learning curve too, going, from a homebrew size up. So one of the things that we've got is that we've had for a long time is our 1-barrel system.
1 barrel, yeah.
And we now have a 2-barrel extension system for that. And it's very homebrew based. So, we've got a lot of people brewing on Blichmann that are going pro, and we've sold tons of these one-barrel systems to folks that just want to take that step.
And they're actually, opening really small breweries, right? And probably brewing quite a bit to keep up with the one barrels.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Some odd gallons.
Yeah. So one of the key factors to do is you really need to put at least a basic business plan together. You probably get on the internet and get some business plans already out there, but a lot of it is just to understand what all your costs are going to be. One of the big things is revenue, and trying to sell one barrel wholesale is not likely going to result in a positive
huge
experience.
profits, huh?
Yeah. So,
but a lot of them are just open. The ones I think of in my area, a lot of them are just opening up their own tasting room.
Yeah, tap rooms.
And they're selling right out of the tap room, right?
And tap rooms are starting to pop up everywhere. One of our very first commercial systems was a guy from Great Fermentations, Darren, and he started a brewery called BeerSmith, just a couple doors down from the homebrew store.
Yeah.
And he opened a really nice tap room in, basically kind of a strip mall like building. So the back is the brewery and the front is this kind of edgy tap room. And he's got, I think, about 12 different taps and brews some phenomenal beers. And when he got started with this, he was brewing on the one barrel system, and they would brew twice a day. And he just built a large walk-in cooler that he fabricated himself and used some air conditioning units with the cool bots. And just a very simple way to go. Fermenters in that one barrel size, you can cool those externally with air by putting them in a cooler like that to control the fermentation temperatures. And they've got, one of their neat things is they've got 10 to 12 different beers on tap. And since they brew so often,
that's cool, yeah.
Those 12 beers are always changing. And,
right.
So when customers come in, it's like, what does Darren have now? And he's won just a number of awards at the Indiana State Fair, Indiana Professional Brewer of the Year a number of times. But and even won a medal at GABF either this past year or year before.
Yeah, I think one of the attractions of many of these small breweries is they're able to brew a lot of different kinds of beers and kind of see what sticks,
Right.
As opposed to a craft brewery, a lot of times is brewing the same beer over and over and over again.
Right. And you've got to get the volume out there to sell these things at wholesale. So, big difference selling it for, $80 for a 6 keg.
Right.
Versus, $5-6 a pint at retail.
Well, let's take a step back for a minute and just explain why these nano-sized breweries really appeal to folks that are just starting out.
One of the neat things is just from a risk management, just to be able to step in there, because there's a couple of things, and we both know from having started businesses.
Yeah.
Part of it is, do you like doing this for a living? Because it's different if it's a hobby and then you go to do it for a living.
Right.
So some of it is just if you really like running a business for a living.
Yeah.
And
there's some challenges involved.
Yeah, there sure is.
Taxes and licenses and permits and all the other fun stuff.
Right. So if you start small, if you don't have the wherewithal to, really jump in, full force, this is a way for you to determine, do you really like brewing for a living? Do you like running a business? You can establish a market. So do we really have a market for this? What is the demand?
Name, sure.
Yeah, and you can go through those things at a little bit lower risk. And once you've established that you like it, that you're good at it, that's kind of important. And then also you've established a market. That's something you can go to a bank with,
right?
And say, I've got an established clientele. I've got business evidence that I've been
revenue streams,
revenues and profits. And you can take that to a bank, and then you can take that next step. I tell people if your plan is to brew one barrel the rest of your life, you're going to be pretty tired. So you should really be planning to outgrow this equipment.
Right.
And that's
right.
it's. Some people think it's odd that I tell them. I said you need to have a plan within maybe a year to outgrow that equipment. But what you're going to have at the very end is one awesome pilot system for you to do test batches or just to do some small seasonals.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what one of these Nanobrewery setups might look like. I know there's a huge variation in what people are putting together. Some people are just cobbling together homebrew equipment, but What does a typical setup look like at the 1 to 3 barrel size, maybe?
We've got our first recommended size. There are some people that try to start in that 20-gallon range, and that's got to be pretty tough.
Yeah, you got to brew a lot of 20-gallon batches, right?
Right.
To make a profit.
Yeah. So the 1 barrel is probably our most common starter size, and typically people would brew at least every day. A lot of breweries would double batch, 2 to 3 days a week, just to meet their demand, and then they would have matching conicals, and we have a really economical 1 barrel conical.
So 1 barrel, just to put it in perspective, 1 barrel is 36 gallons, right?
Yeah, 30. I think finished is 32 and a half gallons.
32 and a half gallons, and then what's that in liters? The folks that are overseas, what's that in liters roughly?
About 1 hectoliter.
About 100 liters.
Yeah.
So you have a fairly. Are we looking at a 3-tier system, Luna bag system? What kind of system?
A system that large, you would typically do horizontal. They just get too tall, and pumps are not that big of a deal.
Right.
And really, if you're going to move up to a commercial system, they're all going to be horizontal systems anyway.
So it's a 3-vessel system.
3-vessel.
Horizontal with
very
pumps.
Typical.
To transfer between.
No, Darren Connor right here, he actually batch barges, so he uses a 2-kettle system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's a batch barger, but that's one way to do it. The more traditional way is the 3-tier or 3-kettle setup, and basically just like homebrewing.
Cool.
Just on a larger scale.
And then what are they using for fermenters?
What we really do is we pair it, since we've got the suite that kind of pairs up nicely. Predominantly, they're using our 1 barrel fermentator conical.
Right.
I've also seen people use some of the wine fermenters. Marchisio wine fermenters are fairly economical.
I've seen some big. One of the ones near us had big plastic fermenters. Actually,
yeah,
they were working
I've seen plastic. The only risk with plastic is you got to be very careful not to scratch anything in the inside, which can lead to some contamination issues. But yeah, there are a number of people using the plastics as well.
Now, are they going cryo or not? Are they? A lot of them have refrigeration associated with their fermentation, or a lot of them just brewing ales?
Most are, even if they're brewing ales, most that I've seen are using a refrigerated or conditioned room. So again, with this smaller, 1 and 2 barrel, you can control that temperature fairly well, just with external cooled air, versus the expense of a glycol chilling system and jackets and all that.
Right. I've even seen one of the ones near us had a cold room. They actually had a cold room where they, ferment the beer. Kind of cool. Well, I also know a lot of the folks are going electric because all the paperwork involved in trying to install gas systems and venting systems, and of course you got to worry about zoning and all this other stuff that comes into play. What are some of the advantages of having an electric system for electric heat for a small brewery?
One of the big advantages is you don't have the extra heat load from the burners to deal with, because you're typically going to get about 1/3 of the fuel energy into the kettle, and the other 2/3 is going out to the atmosphere. So that's a lot of ventilation you've got to get out. Right. With electric, you really just have fumes, to get rid of just steam.
Right. So the requirements are a lot less and easier to install, easier to get certified. Right. You probably need some 220 volt drops or something like that.
And vent hoods, they depending on what you've got underneath them, require different certifications and fire suppression and all those kind of things. So that's something too to check out when you're starting this. Is talking to some of the building inspectors and say, this is what I'm trying to do. Help me here. And my experience is doing building things that we've done in our facility. If you get them involved early, they're really happy to help you. If you put something in and you're trying to get them to pass it and it's not what they're wanting, they can be kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah. So a lot of them are, setting up tap rooms. They're looking for, small retail space. A lot of them are really small. I've seen ones a few hundred square feet.
Yeah.
Because they're looking for that retail space where they can make the sales at the tap room.
Right.
What are some of the challenges in finding the right location?
I think some of it is just really knowing your market, and some of your market is our fellow homebrewers.
Yeah.
And you can set up in some of the downtown areas where there's a lot of different restaurants and things. People go out for dinner and they may want to go out for drinks afterwards. Darren's place is right next to the homebrew store.
That's pretty convenient.
Yeah, and there's just a great synergy with great fermentations and beer brewery just right there.
Awesome.
So that's just try to see where your where your client base will be. And it's going to really depend too on what type of community. If you're in a big city, that's going to be a little bit different than if you're in Lafayette, Indiana, where we are.
Right.
We would want to locate downtown. So there's just some of that, just knowing where that niche is and where people will go for that kind of edgy beer, wine tasting, different things like that.
And it's interesting you mentioned leveraging off the homebrews thing. Obviously, a lot of these folks are well-known homebrewers, or at least locally known by their club before they even get into it. So, kind of a great way to market and get started, huh?
Right. Yeah.
We mentioned earlier if you're only brewing, a barrel at a time, you got to brew a lot more often. What are some of the challenges that come into play with brewing a lot? Obviously, you got to have a lot of fermenters, right?
Yes, you do. We also have, some people will double batch into a single larger fermenter.
I've seen that a lot. Yeah, even with commercial craft breweries,
right.
They do that quite often. Yeah.
Yeah. So like even a small 3-barrel brew house would typically have 7-barrel conicals, double batch into it. But we have an actual extension. So as you outgrow your 1-barrel, and my thought is hopefully you do, because if you're not busy with a 1-barrel, you probably don't have a market for either your product or just enough people there that are into drinking craft brew. So we've got an extension so you can double the capacity of your wort making equipment, your kettles, and also your fermenters.
We've already talked a little bit about the advantage of being able to brew a lot of different kinds of beers. What are some of the varieties that you've seen come out of some of these real small nano breweries?
It is just like homebrewers. There are just any plethora of things from Kolsch to chili pepper porters to that's kind of one of the neat things too with the smaller batches. You can really experiment because if you come up with something that's just not so high a seller, you don't have 7 barrels of it that you've got to try to get rid of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've seen a lot of them trying all kinds of different things. One interesting idea I've seen is some of these really small breweries will set up, like a subscription service or a sponsor service where people can come in and pay a fee to get specialty beers that are brewed periodically throughout the year.
Oh, I've not heard of that. That's
really cool.
cool.
Yeah, I think they were doing that at Modern Times and a few other places. It's kind of neat. They offer a subscription that. Or a special program where people are allowed to get, maybe select reserve type, really off the wall type stuff that they're brewing throughout the year, on a first come basis, which is kind of neat. Of course, a lot of these people are working with, even smaller systems, 20-gallon pots and stuff like that. What are some of the upgrades that they can add to automate the brewery and also to make it easier to expand?
What we've actually done with our kettles is make them modular so that you can make a very quick upgrade. You don't have to move to a complete new system. So we've got an extension for our kettles, so you can go from 1 barrel to 2.
That's cool.
And also an extension that goes into our conicals that take it from 1 barrel to 2.
Awesome. So they can step it right up there.
Right, and we're working towards getting up to a 3-barrel brew house, and should see that here in a while. So.
Well, that was actually my next question. Was you guys offer systems from the home brewer all the way up? What sizes do you have for Blichmann systems? Starting at maybe a 20 gallons or something.
Yeah, we have a 20-gallon batch size, the 1 barrel, 2 barrel, and eventually we're going to have the 3-barrel system that'll be a little bit about in between the homebrew design and the commercial design. So. It still will have a lot of the manual operation since it's physically a lot smaller. So a manual paddle for a mash rake instead of a motorized system, and, won't have the grist hydrator. Those are all really cool things, but they're really expensive.
Yeah.
So mash clean outdoors and things like that really, get it, just make it a lot easier to handle, 100 plus pounds of malt.
Are you selling all automated systems, or are you selling components so people can piece together systems? Both?
Both, yeah. So we've got, for our smaller systems, we've got our tower power controller and our rims rocket. For the bigger systems, you're generally going to be doing single-step infusions.
Right.
And we'll be having a control panel for that to maintain your hot liquor temperatures for that and monitor your mash temperatures. So automation for that, but enough automation that it's economical, but not so much with pneumatic control valves and things like that are awesome for a large brewery, but for a small brewery it's just a lot of cost.
Yeah. Well, of course, the next challenge if you're building one of these nano breweries is if you're actually successful. Now you got to raise money for the next step up. And, so, I mean, what are some of the challenges they have in raising the capital to step up to the next level, which is typically, tens of barrels, right?
Yes, yeah.
What are some of the challenges that small brewery faces trying to make that next step?
I think probably the single biggest challenge is getting a bank to take the risk and lend them the money.
Obviously.
Yeah, so, and a lot of that is, if you've got very
Or you got to
strong,
take on new partners, right?
Right, there's some that, if you've got very strong personal finances, you've got some cash in the bank, you can put a lot of that up for collateral and get going big from the beginning, which is great if you can do that. But if you can't, you can use this business as basically proof that you know how to run a business, and it's going to make the bank a lot more comfortable that, okay, the guy knows what he's doing. He's growing, he understands cash flow, he's paying his vendors, and they're going to be a lot more likely to lend him money and lend him money at a better rate than what he might, if it's just, I'm just going to start this brewery and, I've got no experience, I've got no, previous businesses I've run. Banks get a little worried, particularly nowadays. So.
And then, of course, the other option is to take on either business partners or something like that, investors, angel investors, those kind of. What are some of the strings that come with that?
Again, it's if you're investing money in a in the stock market or another business, you're expecting to get a return for that. So you now have another boss other than just yourself and your wife, or your husband if you're a female brewer.
Yeah.
You got to please those investors, and you got to provide them a return, and and providing them that return takes away cash for you to grow and invest in the business.
Of course,
you've got that. And then the other thing too is, you're bringing on partners or other involved investors. Is if you've got differing views of where you want to take the business, it can be challenging and taxing on relationships and friendships and all that. So that's some of the soft things you deal with as a business owner too.
So what typical sizes do you see? I know you don't sell systems above 3 barrels, but what systems do people step into next? How big do they get? How small do they start?
I think one of the more common sizes that people start at is like a 7 barrel. And again, that's going to be more of a full commercial system that can have varying degrees of automation. But they're fairly expensive. They're in that $60,000 range. Depending. Plus, that's just for the work-making equipment.
Wow.
And you've got to have a steam generator because those are going to be jacketed, steam jacketed. And you're going to get the conicals. You're going to need a glycol cooling system.
Right.
So those things all add up. And that's where the big investment is.
So how much investment are we looking at here? Is it hundreds of thousands of dollars? I've heard folks raising $1 million.
A 7 barrel system, it kind of depends what all you're gonna, you've got to get to make that next step. But you got to be thinking about, I got to pay for leases. I've got to, put infrastructure into the building most likely. You've got, the cooling, the chillers to put in. You've got to have people to install the equipment. You can't just
operate the equipment.
You just can't heave-ho that out of a pickup truck. So there's a lot of those, startup expenses to go, but spending a couple $100,000 is not an unreasonable number for all said and done for a 7-barrel brew house.
Right, and I think another challenge you run into, of course, is distribution, right? Because now you're not necessarily selling at all retail out of the brew house anymore. So the whole distribution and pricing model changes.
Yes,
right?
that does. So there's that setting, and that varies so much, depending on what area of the country you're in too.
Yeah.
And you're selling a lot more volume, which you have to if you're going to be selling wholesale. And there's also, you can still do that in the tap room and sell wholesale,
right?
Which is a great model too, because you can get some of your beers out to the local community for people to try and go, geez, I'm going to go check out the tap room and see what else they've got. So that's a great way too. Even if you're brewing, the small 1-barrel, just throwing a teaser keg out to some local bars and things is a great way to get people, as a guest brew.
Right, but your margins can be a lot higher on the stuff that you're selling
out
of the tap room than it is. Because now you got to bottle it, you got to package it, you got to label it, you got to
or just send it out kegs of it. But you're going to be
and then you're still selling it at a wholesale level, exactly,
Mm-hmm.
which might be half or a little bit more of what the retail price is.
Oh, significantly less than half. I think I figured it out once. You're roughly going to be making about your net revenue would be about $1,000 to $1,200 a barrel versus a few $100s a barrel.
Pretty big difference.
Yeah.
So now you got to brew a lot more barrels.
You sure do. Yes.
Now as the systems, as we're starting to expand to this larger system, you mentioned the investment that they made is often not lost. They can use it as a pilot brewery, right?
That's right. So, again, Darren at Beer, he uses our system now for just pilot batches and, and sometimes just for some, test beers or some little seasonals that he wants to do. So all is not lost.
So they can brew it on the pilot brewery that they're very familiar with it and then step it up to the big one.
Right.
Well, John, I wanted to ask you, have you got anything else you'd like to add on the, sort of Nano-Brewery considerations?
A lot of it is, just to kind of summarize, a lot of it is really just, having a good business plan and being realistic with yourself on, if, being able to take that risk and I always say the runway behind you doesn't do you any good.
Yeah.
So, you got to do that what if, something, doesn't go like I want, and that's one of the things with the small batch, it's, or the 1, 2, 3 barrel systems.
Right. The Nano-Brewery.
You're not gonna survive if you're gonna try to wholesale with that. So you really need to think, the retail end, and just be realistic with, what you're gonna expend on this investment and what it's gonna cost you, and being able to earn enough profit that you can then step up to that bigger system.
Yeah, several folks have told me that it's more about the business end of things than it is about the beer and brewing. And, and in fact, they spend a lot less time brewing than they used to often.
Yeah, and the other thing too is when you're on a smaller system, you better be prepared, to brew, every day, or do a couple days of back-to-backs.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a lot of work. So be prepared for that as well.
Well, John, I wanted to give you a minute at the end to talk about some of the new things going on at Blichmann Engineering. What do you got going on?
We have lots of product that we've got here on display today. First, the first that we're showing our new G2 Boilermaker kettles at the show.
This is the first time you've shown that, huh?
Yes, it is. Yeah, we've had them out for a while.
Tell us what the G2 has.
The G2 is it's our generation 2 of the Boilermaker that we've had in production for many years now. But we've invested in a lot of tooling, and we've brought those back to the States. So they're all the kettles are all made in the States. They're single piece.
Made in the USA, huh?
That they are. It's all single piece. So they're deep drawn, so there's no welds. The surface finish is awesome. We've got a newly designed valve that can be oriented in any direction. Soft touch handles or cool touch handles on the lid and kettle. So just a really nice improvements that we've made for the simplicity and longevity of the kettle. Lifetime warranty on the kettle. So.
Of course. like all your stuff, right?
Most of the stuff.
Most of the stuff. Okay. Anything else new you want to talk about, John, with at Blichmann?
Well, I touched briefly. We're working our way towards a 3-barrel brew house, and that seems to
in-house.
What's that?
I'm sorry. No, not in-house. This is for your
So we're working on
product
that.
offering. Yep.
And we've got a lot of top secret products that we're
top secret though.
That we've been working. Highly top secret.
Well, I look forward to hearing more about those. Well, John, is there anything else you'd like to add today?
Well, I appreciate you having me on the show.
Always a pleasure.
To talk about beer. It's always a joy.
And the 1911, is it good?
It's delicious.
1911 from Coronado Brewing.
I'm going to be walking over there.
They happen to be right next to us. Yeah, mine's already empty. So I thought I'd put in a plug for them, but the beer's excellent. Well, thanks again, John. Really appreciate you being on the show.
Anytime.
So again, today my guest was John Blichmann. He's the CEO of Blichmann Engineering. He's joining us from the BeerSmith booth at the National Homebrew Conference. John is a fellow Gunsight grad and makes some of the best world-class brewing and fermenting systems right here in the USA.
That we do.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Pleasure, man.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, thanks again to John Blichmann for joining me this week from the National Homebrew Conference. Thanks also to Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, where you get your 15% discount on their magazine or anything in their store if you use the offer code BeerSmith2015 when you shop at beerandbrewing.com. Again, use the offer code BeerSmith2015 and get your subscription now at beerandbrewing.com. And also BeerSmith software, the industry standard for home and professional brewers. Lets you design great beer recipes and brew with confidence. Download your free 21-day trial today from beersmith.com. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a great brewing week.